In the meantime, we had last night Joe Biden appearing, a fiery delivery, a forceful speech happening in the dead of night. He delivered those remarks well past 11 o'clock our time in Middle Tennessee. They pushed him back. I almost felt bad for him. And then I started seeing some of the dastardly shenanigans as detailed by the 291-page report by the Republicans that is getting widely ignored by the mainstream media. They ignore by the mainstream media because they consider the Biden issue to be put to bed. It's something that they don't have to deal with anymore. They never wanted to deal with it to begin with. They never wanted to discuss the fact that Joe Biden was compromised as vice president of the United States when he publicly announced that he was going to force Burisma to fire a prosecutor or withhold money. Well, little did we know he was doing that to benefit his son. He wasn't doing that to benefit the United States of America as much as he wanted to brag about it. And yes, Biden would be an incubus as opposed to a succubus. An incubus would be a male demon that steals your soul in the dead of night and has sex with you. Well, he's certainly screwed America. That much is, just look around. But it occurs to me because I received a text from a loyal listener, longtime listener of the show, that says, what is this Joe Biden showering with his daughter's story? I hear about it, but I've not read about it. How old was she at the time? So this story goes back to, for those who don't know, it was 2020, I believe. Ashley Biden had been living at a friend's house in Delray Beach, Florida in 2020. She moved out of that home and left a number of her personal belongings behind when she moved out in June of that year. The owner of the home allowed her to keep the items at the house, unbeknownst to the individual that moved in after her. According to federal prosecutors, a woman moved into the room when Biden left, discovered the items in a closet there that she had left, and after reading about some of these items, this woman was named Amy Harris, Aimee Harris. She looked through a number of these items and recognized that one of the items was a personal diary of Ashley Biden's. She then subsequently decided to sell that property that she considered to be abandoned. And it makes sense that she would consider that. She's renting the space, and that property was left in the space. She decided to sell it. She initially attempted to sell it to the Trump team. And this portion of the story never gets reported by the mainstream media, but Team Trump declined on it. They wanted to sell the materials to the Trump campaign, and in 2020, the Trump campaign declined. Ultimately, they decided for $40,000 to sell the material to Project Veritas, which was then run by James O'Keefe. He has since left the organization, and he has started his own media watchdog group called OMG. Ultimately, Amy Harris was prosecuted by federal prosecutors for theft of property and conspiracy. And Harris and her co-conspirator, a man by the name of Robert Kurlander, eventually pleaded guilty in August of 2022 to a conspiracy charge, admitting that they had received $20,000 each paid by Project Veritas for the sale of the diary. Now, that's all well and good, and we can try to figure out. Look, I have my own opinions. If you leave property behind, and after the fact, it was determined by Ashley Biden that she had forgotten this diary, and she decided it seemed too many involved in the case. And I'm not intimately involved enough to be able to tell you one way or the other. But Ashley Biden claimed after the fact that she had intended to retrieve the property and that she had an agreement with the property owner, and that would be the homeowner. Harris, Kurlander, and others say that never happened, that she just left the items behind as throwaway items, and ultimately it was discovered that they had some value. $40,000 to be precise. Well, what does this mean for Joe Biden, Ashley Biden, and others? When you hear about Joe Biden showering with his daughter, it's because his daughter said that he did so. In one of the pages in the diary, it was, and I'm just reading directly from the diary here, it said, I was hypersexualized at a young age. What is this to do? Was I molested? I think so. I really remember specifics, but do not remember trauma. I remember not liking the Woolsacks house. I remember somewhat being sexualized with Caroline. I remember having sex with friends at a young age, showers with my dad, which were probably not appropriate. So it's one page of her diary that many have focused on, and no one seems to be willing to ask the question that is obvious. At what age did you have showers with your father? If you had an ability to remember those showers with your father, I would suggest that maybe you were too old to have showers with your father. And so if you hear any reference to that, then that's what that's in reference to. Now, I'm not here to suggest that I have any idea what's going on. Ashley Biden apparently has a fine relationship with her father at this point in her life. We can make of that. I mean, make of that what you will. It is, as they say, what it is. One way or the other, Joe Biden had his nomination stolen from him, and he made the point last night on national television to say that he was just fine with all of that, offering himself up for volunteer public service in the aftermath of his presidency. Boy, it's a good thing that Joe Biden's not president anymore, isn't it? Oh, wait, he still is. Fact check, during his speech last night, Joe Biden took credit for creating thousands of jobs. He actually took credit for installing IBEW jobs, 500,000 charging stations all across America. The IBEW made that installation happen. Fact check, as of this morning, only 8 of those charging stations have actually been built in 2.5 years. He claimed 500,000. He was only off by 499,992 of the charging stations. In the meantime, Andy Beshears, our neighbor to the north in Kentucky, is making waves. The Democrat governor offered a speech last night that just hit with a thud. I mean, there wasn't a lot there. He's the moderate in the room after all. But this morning he was making waves for this comment. Andy Beshears very upset with J.D. Vance, very upset with the Republican stance on the issue of abortion. Had a few things to say about it. J.D. Vance has had a few things to say with regard to the issue of rape and incest and whether or not those should be protections under the law. Here's what Andy Beshears said this morning to MSNBC with regard to J.D. Vance. Listen toward the end here.
Of Roe, which should be pretty inspiring come Election Day. And then on the right, Governor, you have Republican candidates and Republicans talking about babies being aborted at 9 months. Can you even make sense of their argument? Because half of it's not even true.
Okay, I just want to clean up her setup of this. That is Mika of MSNBC, whatever her last name is, Brzezinski, I guess it is. So, yes, Democrats want to give women the ability, the legal ability to terminate pregnancy up until the point of birth. They like to harp on the idea that this doesn't happen very often. The idea that it happens at all should be an abomination, and it should disgust any reasonable human being. My stand on this has always been very clear. I can have reasonable conversations with people who disagree regarding when life begins. I understand that we have different faiths, I guess it is, that perhaps lead us in this regard, and that some people are more faithful than others. And the law applies to all faithful and non-faithful equally, meaning that you have to make some of these determinations based on a scientific diagnosis of when life is present, separate and distinct from the life of the mother. Now, I'm not here to get into a big abortion debate, but just to say that I can have a reasonable discussion with someone that believes in first trimester abortions. I can disagree with them. I can sit down with them. I can have these conversations. I can talk to them about erring on the side of caution. I can talk to them about opportunities that the individual woman had to prevent pregnancy, whether it be to abstain from sex, to prevent pregnancy through any manner of contraception, to perhaps utilize the morning after pill as a result of sexual activity and the dangers or the possibility of a pregnancy. All of those things are on the table for discussion, and I don't have a problem discussing these things. I can't talk to a liberal about third trimester abortions. The woman in this case has had so many opportunities to take care of whatever quote-unquote situation she finds herself in without destroying another life. But liberals want to have none of it. And they refuse to accept that, yes, third trimester abortions happen, and yes, some of those third trimester abortions are on-demand abortions, non-medically necessary abortions. Mika Brzezinski conveniently overlooks all of that when asking Governor Andy Beshears, who is obviously an expert in this subject, being, a male, but he is a Democrat from Kentucky. Let's hear what he has to say.
Now, it's just fear tactics, and it's just lying to people. I mean, think about what some people have had to go through because of these laws. J.D. Vance calls pregnancy resulting from rape inconvenient. Like, inconvenience is traffic. I mean, it is, make him go through this. I mean, it is someone being violated.
You hear what he just said there? They say the quiet part out loud now.
Traffic. I mean, it is, make him go through this.
Make him go through this. So they're talking about pregnancy as the result of rape. And the fact that J.D. Vance apparently, according to them, and I've not fact-checked it, so I don't know that I trust them, but apparently at some point in a contextualized conversation about this, used the word inconvenient to describe rape that results in a pregnancy. And you can argue whether or not that word has been inappropriately lifted, and if put in its own context, perhaps we can argue whether it was appropriately used. Regardless of that, Andy Beshears slipped in there that he let's see him go through this. So you're dismissively suggesting that Vance family members should be impregnated through rape in an attempt to change his stance on abortion and his belief that life begins at conception? You can disagree with that belief, but to suggest that he ought to have a family member raped as a result of that belief, it's a little bit beyond the pale, don't you think?
Vance calls pregnancy resulting from rape inconvenient. Like, inconvenience is traffic. I mean, it is, make him go through this. I mean, it is.
Make him go through this. It's disgusting.
Someone being violated, someone being harmed, and then telling them that they don't have options after that, that fails any test of decency, of humanity. But here's the thing. It also shows they don't have any empathy at all. And a president and a vice president has to have empathy.
I, of course, believe that a president and a vice president needs to have empathy. I would empathize with so many of those children in the 7th or 8th month of pregnancy that have been killed, and they seemingly want to ignore those individuals. So I just wish that the conversation could be had on balance as opposed to the imbalanced manner in which the mainstream media conducts this conversation. I understand it's the most difficult of political conversations to have because it involves public policy that applies to all and very intimate and very heartfelt and emotional faith-based belief on a lot of this. 615-737-9986. We'll get a few of your calls regarding it. We'll continue to break down what happened at the DNC. I do not have... It was Belkay's job to monitor dumpster fires. You got to be able to
put yourself in a position that you...
Oh, sorry about that. It was Belkay's job to monitor dumpster fires. And I don't think we have an update on dumpster fires for last night. It was during the entirety of the DNC, we set the over-under at 3.5 dumpster fires. Actual dumpster fires. There were protests.
Yeah, but there were no dumpsters set on fire.
But the problem is, do we really know that or not? And here's why I would say that, is that you can't find any of the protests are going on in Chicago, and they're getting rather rowdy in Chicago, but nobody will cover the protest. I mean, maybe a little bit on Fox News or News Nation, but for the most part, nothing. Maybe something on Newsmax, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. They're not showing us any of those protests because they don't want you to believe that it happens. If they don't show it, it didn't happen. So I don't know.
So how are we going to enforce this bet?
We're just going to have to do some sleuthing and break it down night by night and rely on accurate information and sourcing that we come up with. I'm going to do my best to try to get an accurate number on the number of actual dumpster fires, which was set, by the way, once again, at 3.5 dumpster fires. Dumpster fires that do not have to do anything with the actual goings on at the DNC. We just set dumpster fires in the city of Chicago during the event. So they don't have to be interrelated. In other words, we're not setting, Harris Walls signs on fire and throwing them in the dumpster. You don't have to have a, Hamas today, Hamas tomorrow, Hamas forever sign on fire. It could be about anything. It might just be Chicago people keeping warm. Who knows?